After divorcing my husband, my daughter threw me out of her house without thinking twice. She said, "I've never really liked you, Mom. Go out. I'd rather prefer Dad and my stepmom to live here." I smiled, thinking it was all a joke, until she asked security to throw me out. I left without a word. The next morning, she received an email that changed everything. I will tell you what happened. Before we continue, support us by clicking on the like button. Tell us in the comments section where you are watching us from, and click on the subscribe button so that you don't miss our big story tomorrow. Now let me tell you what happened from the beginning. I can still feel the cool evening air on my skin as I stood on her front porch that day. My suitcase sat beside me, and I was so excited to finally spend time with my daughter after months of living alone. The divorce had broken my heart into tiny pieces, but seeing her beautiful home made me feel hopeful. Maybe we could rebuild our relationship here. The house looked perfect with its white walls and pretty flowers in the garden. Everything seemed so peaceful and lovely. I rang the doorbell and waited with a big smile on my face. When she opened the door, I expected a warm hug. Instead, she looked at me like I was a stranger, selling something she did not want. Her eyes were cold and empty. My heart started beating fast, but I told myself everything would be okay. She stepped aside to let me in, but there was no welcome in her movements. The hallway smelled like fresh paint and new furniture. Everything looked expensive and carefully chosen. I felt nervous walking through her home, like I might break something valuable just by being there. The silence between us felt heavy and uncomfortable. I tried to make conversation, asking about her work and her life. She answered with short words that told me nothing. When we reached the living room, I saw my ex-husband's photo on the shelf. Next to it was a picture of his new wife, my daughter's stepmom, but there were no photos of me anywhere, not a single one. That hurt more than I expected. I set my bag down carefully and turned to face my daughter. She stood with her arms crossed, looking at her phone instead of me. That is when she said the words that changed everything between us forever. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something important." Her voice was flat and emotionless. I nodded, trying to stay calm even though my hands were shaking. "I've been thinking about this for a long time," she continued, "and I've decided that I don't want you staying here. Actually, I don't want you in my life at all." I laughed nervously because surely this was some kind of joke. Maybe she was testing me or playing a game. "Sweetie, what are you talking about?" I asked softly. She looked up from her phone and stared directly at me. "I've never really liked you, Mom. You've always been too much, too emotional, too needy, too everything. Dad and Jennifer, they understand me. They give me space. They don't suffocate me like you do." Each word felt like a knife cutting into my chest. I tried to breathe normally, but the air felt thick and hard to swallow. "But honey, I'm your mother. Love you. Whatever I did wrong, we can talk about it and fix it." She shook her head firmly. "There's nothing to fix because I don't want to fix it. I want you to leave. Dad and Jennifer are moving in next week, and I need this space for them, not you." I felt my legs go weak. This could not be happening. Not after everything I had sacrificed for her. Not after all the nights I stayed up when she was sick. Not after all the birthday parties I planned. Not after paying for her college when money was tight. "Please don't do this," I whispered. "Just give me one night. Let's talk in the morning when we're both calmer." She picked up her phone again and started typing. "I'm calling security now. You need to leave immediately." My mouth opened, but no words came out. I watched her fingers move across the screen, and I realized this was really happening. My own daughter was kicking me out like I was trash. The room started spinning around me. I grabbed the edge of the couch to steady myself. "You can't be serious." I finally managed to say, "Where am I supposed to go?" "I gave up my apartment to come here. I thought we were going to spend time together." She did not look up. "That sounds like a you problem, not a me problem. I never asked you to give up your apartment. You did that on your own." The coldness in her voice scared me more than anger would have. Anger eventually cools down, but this coldness felt permanent, like ice that would never melt. Within minutes, a security guard appeared at the door. He looked uncomfortable, probably because he could see this was a family situation. "Ma'am, I need you to gather your things and leave the property," he said gently. I looked at my daughter one more time, hoping she would change her mind, hoping she would see how much pain she was causing me. But she just stood there with her arms crossed, watching me like I was a stranger. I picked up my suitcase with trembling hands. My vision was blurry with tears, but I refused to let them fall in front of her. I would not give her that satisfaction. As I walked toward the door, I passed by family photos on the wall. Photos from her childhood, her first day of school, her graduation. I was in all of them, smiling and proud. But apparently, those memories meant nothing to her now. The security guard walked beside me as we headed to the front door. Each step felt impossible, like walking through deep mud. When we reached the porch, the cool evening air hit my face. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. It would have been beautiful if my heart was not breaking into a million pieces. "I'm sorry about this," the guard whispered as he gently closed the door behind me. I heard the lock click. That sound echoed in my ears like a gunshot. I stood there on the porch for several minutes, unable to move. My suitcase felt heavier than it ever had before. Cars drove past on the street. People walking their dogs waved hello. Life continued normally for everyone else while my world crumbled. I finally forced my legs to move. One step, then another, then another. I walked down the driveway feeling completely lost and alone. My car was parked on the street. I opened the trunk and threw my suitcase inside with more force than necessary. Getting into the driver's seat, I gripped the steering wheel tightly and stared at the house. Lights were on inside. I could see my daughter's shadow moving past the window. She was probably already redecorating, removing any trace of me that might have existed there. I started the engine but did not drive away immediately. Memories flooded my mind without permission. I remembered holding her as a tiny baby, promising to always protect her. I remembered teaching her to ride a bicycle, running beside her until she found her balance. I remembered helping her with homework late at night, both of us exhausted but determined. I remembered defending her when teachers said she was difficult because I knew she was just strong-willed and special. All those memories felt meaningless now, like I had poured love into a cup with a hole in the bottom. No matter how much I gave, it was never enough. It all just drained away. I thought about my ex-husband and his new wife moving into that house. They would sleep in the guest room I was supposed to use. They would eat breakfast at the table where I should have been sitting. They would become the family, and I would become the forgotten one. That realization hurt worse than the divorce itself. When my husband left me for another woman, I thought that was the worst pain possible. But this was different. This was my own child choosing to erase me from her life, choosing someone else over the woman who gave birth to her. Finally, I pulled away from the curb and started driving. I had no destination in mind. I just drove through the city streets as darkness fell around me. My phone started ringing. I glanced at the screen and saw it was my sister calling. I could not talk to her, not yet, not when I could barely hold myself together. I drove past restaurants where families ate dinner together, past parks where children played on swings while their mothers watched past stores closing for the night. Everything looked normal and peaceful, but nothing felt normal to me anymore. Eventually, I found myself at a small motel on the edge of town. The neon sign flickered with a buzzing sound. The parking lot was nearly empty. It looked sad and forgotten, which felt appropriate. I checked in and dragged my suitcase to a room that smelled like cleaning products and old carpet. The bed was small and hard. The walls were thin enough to hear conversations from neighboring rooms. This was my reality now. I sat on the edge of the bed and finally let the tears come. They poured out of me like a river breaking through a dam. My whole body shook with sobs. I cried for the daughter I thought I knew. I cried for the relationship I thought we had. I cried for all the years I spent believing that love was enough. When the tears finally stopped, I felt empty and hollow inside. I lay down on the scratchy bedspread and stared at the ceiling. A water stain in the corner looked like a dark cloud. How did everything go so wrong? I replayed the divorce in my mind, looking for answers. My husband had cheated on me with a woman from his office. When I found out, he did not apologize or beg for forgiveness. Instead, he blamed me, said I was too focused on our daughter, said I did not pay enough attention to him, said I had let myself go. Each excuse felt like another betrayal. The divorce was ugly and painful, but through it all, I thought my daughter would stand by me. I thought we would support each other through this difficult time. Instead, she grew closer to her father and his new wife. She started spending weekends with them, started calling Jennifer by her first name like they were friends, started asking for their advice instead of mine. At first, I told myself it was normal. Teenagers need space to figure out who they are. I gave her room to breathe, thinking she would come back to me eventually, but the distance only grew wider. Phone calls became shorter. Visits became less frequent. Excuses became more creative. I tried everything to reconnect with her. I planned special mother otter trips. I sent thoughtful gifts for no reason. I showed up at her important events, but nothing worked. She treated me like an annoying relative she had to tolerate, not like the mother who raised her. Now lying in this cheap motel room, I finally understood the truth. My daughter had made her choice long before tonight. Tonight was just the moment she said it out loud. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from my sister again asking if I was okay. I typed a response saying I was fine, then deleted it. I was not fine. I was the opposite of fine. But I did not have the energy to explain what happened. Not yet. Sleep did not come easily that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my daughter's cold expression. I heard her voice saying she never liked me. I felt the door locking behind me. When I finally drifted off, I had nightmares about being locked out of places, knocking on doors that nobody would open, calling for help that never came. I woke up before sunrise feeling exhausted and emotionally drained. The room looked even sadder in the early morning light. I took a shower in the tiny bathroom, letting the hot water run over me until it turned cold. Getting dressed felt like moving through water. Everything took twice as long as it should. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. My eyes were red and swollen. My face looked older somehow, like I had aged years overnight. This was not the strong woman I used to be. This was someone broken and defeated. But as I stared at my reflection, something shifted inside me. A small spark of anger began to glow beneath the sadness. Who was my daughter to treat me this way, after everything I sacrificed for her, after every late night, every worry, every moment I put her needs before my own? That anger felt good. It felt better than the crushing sadness. I held on to it like a lifeline. I thought about my ex-husband and his new wife. They probably thought they had won, thought they had successfully turned my daughter against me, thought they could just move into her house and play happy family without consequences. They had no idea what was coming. Because what nobody knew, what I had kept secret for months, was that I had been preparing for this possibility. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I needed to protect myself. During the divorce, I had learned a painful lesson. People will take advantage of your kindness if you let them. People will use your love as a weapon against you. So I stopped being the woman who gave everything and asked for nothing in return. I started making smart decisions for my future. Nobody knew that I had quietly invested in property before the divorce was finalized. Nobody knew that I had transferred assets into accounts only I could access. Nobody knew that I had been building a safety net while they thought I was falling apart. Most importantly, nobody knew about the building I had purchased 6 months ago, a beautiful office building in the heart of downtown. The same building where my daughter worked as a manager. The same building she had bragged about to everyone, acting like her position there made her important and untouchable. She had no idea that the mysterious new owner who had bought the building was her own mother. The previous owners had used a management company, so employees never knew who really owned the property. When I took over, I kept that system in place. I stayed invisible, watching from a distance. I had access to every report, every complaint, every detail about how the building operated, including detailed information about how my daughter treated the people who worked under her. What I discovered made me sick to my stomach. My daughter was not the wonderful manager she pretended to be. She was mean and cruel to her employees. She yelled at them for small mistakes. She took credit for their good ideas. She made people cry in meetings. She acted like she was better than everyone else just because of her job title. Reading those reports felt like learning about a stranger. This was not the kind, caring person I had raised. This was someone who used power to hurt others. Someone who enjoyed making people feel small. I wanted to believe it was not true. I wanted to think the reports were exaggerated or wrong. So I did something I never thought I would do. I visited the building disguised as a potential client. I wore different clothes and styled my hair differently. I even wore glasses I did not need. My own daughter walked right past me without recognition. I spent the day observing. I watched her snap at a young employee who brought her coffee that was slightly too cold. I heard her mock someone's presentation in front of the whole team. I saw her take a phone call from her father, laughing and chatting warmly, then immediately turned cold when she hung up to deal with her staff. By the end of that day, I knew the truth. My daughter had become someone I did not recognize, someone I was not sure I even liked anymore. That night in the motel, I made a decision. I was done being the mother who absorbed all the pain and asked for nothing. I was done protecting someone who clearly had no respect for me. If my daughter wanted to throw me away like garbage, then she would learn what it felt like to lose something important. I pulled out my laptop and logged into my secure email account. The message I had drafted weeks ago was still sitting there waiting. I had written it during a moment of anger after a particularly hurtful phone call with my daughter, but I never sent it because part of me kept hoping things would get better. Now I knew better. Things were not going to get better. They were already as bad as they could be. My finger hovered over the send button. Once I clicked it, there would be no going back. My daughter's life would change forever. She would know exactly how it felt to be powerless and unwanted. Was I being cruel, maybe? But sometimes love requires tough lessons. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is let them face the consequences of their actions. Clicked send. The email went out immediately to my daughter and the building's management team. It was professional and clear. Her employment was terminated effective immediately due to multiple complaints about workplace behavior. Her access to the building would be revoked by morning. She had 24 hours to clear out her office. I closed the laptop and felt a strange mix of emotions. Sadness because it had come to this. Relief because I had finally stood up for myself. Fear about what would happen next. But mostly, I felt something I had not felt in a long time. Power. For years, I had given all my power away to people who did not appreciate it. My husband, my daughter, even my friends who took advantage of my kindness. Now I was taking it back. I imagined my daughter waking up to that email, the confusion on her face as she read it, the panic as she realized what it meant, the anger when she started making phone calls trying to fix it. Let her feel those things. Let her experience the fear and uncertainty I had been living with. Let her know what it was like to have your whole world turned upside down by someone you trusted. Sleep came easier after that. Not peaceful sleep, but the exhausted sleep of someone who had finally made a difficult decision. When morning came, I checked my phone, 15 missed calls from my daughter, 12 text messages, 3 voicemails. I deleted them all without reading or listening. Whatever she had to say, I was not ready to hear it. Not yet. I packed my few belongings and checked out of the motel. The morning air was fresh and clean. Birds were singing in nearby trees. The sun was shining brightly. Felt like the beginning of something new. I drove across town to a storage facility where I had been keeping boxes of my belongings since the divorce. Everything I owned was packed away in a small unit. Clothes books, photo albums, kitchen supplies. My entire life reduced to cardboard boxes. But mixed in with those boxes was something else. Legal documents related to another property I owned. A small house on the outskirts of the city. Nothing fancy or impressive, just a simple 2-bedroom house with a yard and a front porch. I had bought it secretly during the divorce proceedings using money from an inheritance my grandmother had left me. My ex-husband never knew about that inheritance. I had kept it separate from our joint finances. Thank goodness. The house was my backup plan, my safety net, the place I would go if everything else fell apart. And everything had definitely fallen apart. I loaded the most important boxes into my car and drove to the little house. It looked exactly as I remembered. The paint was a cheerful yellow color. The garden needed work but had good bones. The porch had a swing that moved gently in the breeze. As I unlocked the front door and stepped inside, I felt something unexpected. Oh. The house was empty and quiet. Sunlight streamed through the windows, making patterns on the wooden floors. Smelled like fresh air and possibilities. This was mine, truly mine. Nobody could take it away from me or kick me out. For the first time in months, I felt safe. I spent the day unpacking boxes and making the house livable. I hung curtains in the windows. I made up the bed with my favorite sheets. I arranged books on the shelves and photos on the walls. Each small task felt healing, like I was rebuilding not just the house, but also myself. By evening, the place looked like a home. My phone continued buzzing with calls and messages from my daughter, but I ignored them all. She could wait. She had made me wait countless times, canceling plans at the last minute or forgetting important dates. Now it was her turn to experience being ignored. Around sunset, my sister finally got through to me by calling from a different number. "Where have you been?" she demanded. "I've been worried sick. Your daughter called me crying, saying something happened with her job and she can't reach you." I took a deep breath before responding. I'm fine, better than fine, actually, and my daughter is exactly where she needs to be. I explained everything to my sister, the visit to my daughter's house, the cruel words being thrown out by security, the email I sent, terminating my daughter's employment. My sister was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something I did not expect. "Good for you. It's about time you stood up for yourself." Those words brought tears to my eyes. I had been so afraid that everyone would think I was a terrible mother for what I had done. But my sister understood. Your daughter has been acting entitled and spoiled for years. My sister continued, "You've let her get away with too much because you felt guilty about the divorce, but none of this was your fault. Your ex-husband cheated. Your daughter made her own choices. You don't owe anyone your dignity." We talked for over an hour. My sister reminded me of all the times my daughter had been disrespectful, all the times she chose her father over me for selfish reasons, all the times she hurt me and never apologized. "You're not being cruel," my sister said firmly. "You're teaching her a lesson she should have learned years ago. Actions have consequences. You can't treat people badly and expect them to keep supporting you." After we hung up, I felt lighter. Having someone validate my decision meant more than I realized. I was not crazy or vindictive. I was simply a mother who had reached her breaking point. The next few days passed in a strange blur. I focused on settling into my new house and tried not to think about what was happening with my daughter. But of course, news traveled fast. My sister called to tell me that my daughter had shown up at her house begging for help. She'd lost her job and had no income. Her father and his new wife had promised to help her, but apparently their promises meant nothing now that things were difficult. They had their own bills to pay, they said. They could not afford to support her indefinitely. The irony was almost funny. My daughter had chosen them over me, and now they were abandoning her when she needed them most. Meanwhile, I was the one she had thrown away. Yet I was the one with resources and stability. Part of me wanted to reach out to offer help and fix everything like I always had. But a stronger part of me knew that would be a mistake. If I rescued her now, she would learn nothing. She would just go back to treating me badly because she would know I would always save her. So I stayed firm. I did not call. I did not text. I let her experience the full weight of her choices. A week after the email, my daughter showed up at my new house. I have no idea how she found my address, but there she was standing on my porch, looking smaller and more vulnerable than I had ever seen her. Her eyes were red from crying. Her hair was messy. She looked tired and scared. "Mom, please, we need to talk," she said when I opened the door. I stood in the doorway, not inviting her inside. "Not yet. What do you want to talk about?" I asked calmly. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything I said. I didn't mean it. I was angry about the divorce and took it out on you." I studied her face carefully, looking for signs of real remorse versus panic at losing her comfortable life. "You told me you never liked me," I said quietly. "You called security to throw me out of your house. You chose your father and his wife over your own mother. Which part of that didn't you mean she started crying harder? All of it. I didn't mean any of it. I was being stupid and cruel. Please, Mom, I need your help. I lost my job. Can't pay my bills. Dad won't help me. I have nowhere else to turn." There it was. The real reason for her tears. Not genuine regret for hurting me, just fear about her own situation. "So you're here because you need something from me." I said, "Not because you actually care about repairing our relationship." She looked shocked, like that had never occurred to her. "No, that's not. I mean, yes, I need help, but I also miss you. I realized how much you mean to me. You realized that after you lost everything," I pointed out. "Not before. Not when you had your job and your house and your father's support. Only now, when you're desperate, did you suddenly remember you have a mother." My daughter's face crumpled. "Please don't do this. I made a mistake. Haven't you ever made a mistake? I had made plenty of mistakes. Trusting my husband. Sacrificing too much for people who did not appreciate it. Believing that love alone was enough. But I had learned from those mistakes. My daughter needed to learn from hers too. I love you." I told her honestly, "I will always love you because you're my daughter, but I will not rescue you from the consequences of your own actions. You need to figure this out yourself." Her mouth fell open in disbelief. "You're really going to let me suffer after everything you said about always being there for me?" "Being there for you doesn't mean protecting you from reality," I replied. "It means loving you enough to let you grow up and face what you've done. You treated me terribly. You humiliated me. You threw me away like I was nothing. Now you're learning what it feels like to be on the other side of that." I started to close the door, but she grabbed it. "Wait, what about my job? You own that building, don't you? You're the one who fired me." He nodded. "Yes, I am. And I didn't fire you because you hurt my feelings. I fired you because you were a terrible manager, You treated your employees badly. You abused your power. Multiple people filed complaints about you. That's not the kind of person I want running operations in my building." She looked stunned. "You were watching me, spying on me. I was doing my job as a property owner, making sure my investment was being managed properly. And what I found was that my daughter had become someone I didn't recognize, someone mean and entitled. And that broke my heart more than anything you said to me that night." Tears streamed down her face. "So what now? You're just going to abandon me like everyone else." "I'm not abandoning you," I said firmly. "I'm giving you space to learn who you are without me fixing everything. You're an adult. You're capable. You can find another job. You can learn to treat people with respect. You can grow from this experience, but you have to do it yourself. I'm done carrying you through life." I gently closed the door and locked it. Standing on the other side, I listened to her cry on my porch. Every instinct screamed at me to open that door and comfort her, to tell her everything would be okay, to write her a check and solve all her problems. But I forced myself to stay still. This was the hardest thing I had ever done. Harder than the divorce, harder than being thrown out of her house, harder than anything I could remember. After several minutes, I heard her footsteps walking away. I peeked through the curtain and watched her get into her car and drive off. My heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. That night, I cried myself to sleep. Not because I regretted my decision, but because being a good parent sometimes means breaking your own heart to teach your child an important lesson. The following weeks were difficult. My daughter continued trying to reach me. Her messages went from angry to pleading to manipulative. She tried guilt trips. She tried playing the victim. She tried having other people contact me on her behalf. I stayed strong. I responded only once with a short message. "I love you." When you're ready to have a real conversation about respect and accountability, not just about what you need from me, I'll be here, but not before then. Then I blocked her number for my own sanity. My sister kept me updated on what was happening. My daughter had moved back into a small apartment. She found a job at a different company at a lower position with less pay. She was struggling, but she was surviving. Most importantly, my sister said she seemed to be changing. She was quieter, more thoughtful. She had stopped bragging about herself constantly. She had started volunteering at a community center on weekends. Maybe hitting rock bottom was exactly what she needed. Maybe losing everything had finally taught her the value of the people who truly loved her. I focused on building my own life during this time. I started attending a support group for divorced women. I made new friends who understood what I had been through. I took a painting class and discovered I actually had some talent. I read books I had been meaning to read for years. I traveled to places I had always wanted to see. For the first time in decades, I was living for myself instead of for everyone else. It felt strange and wonderful and scary all at once. My little yellow house became my sanctuary. I planted flowers in the garden. I hung wind chimes on the porch. I adopted a cat from the local shelter who curled up next to me every evening while I read. This was my life now, simple, quiet, and entirely my own. 3 months after that confrontation on my porch, I received a letter in the mail. Not an email or a text, but an actual handwritten letter. It was from my daughter. I almost threw it away without reading it, but something made me open it instead. The letter was 6 pages long, written in my daughter's messy handwriting. She started by apologizing. Really apologizing, not just saying sorry because she wanted something. She took responsibility for her actions. She explained that losing everything had forced her to look at herself honestly for the first time in years. She admitted that she had been cruel, entitled, and selfish. She said she finally understood how much I had sacrificed for her and how badly she had taken me for granted. She wrote about the lessons she was learning from living on her own with no safety net, about how hard it was to manage money and pay bills and handle life without someone always there to catch her when she fell. She said she was grateful I had let her experience those struggles instead of rescuing her. She wrote about her new job and how she was trying to be a better person, how she made a point of being kind to everyone she worked with, how she volunteered with elderly people at the community center and listened to their stories, how she was going to therapy to understand why she had become so angry and hurtful. At the end of the letter, she wrote something that made me cry. "Mom, I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I don't expect you to welcome me back into your life like nothing happened. I know I destroyed your trust, and trust takes time to rebuild. But I want you to know that I see you now, really see you. Not as someone who exists to meet my needs, but as a person who has feelings and deserves respect. I'm sorry it took losing you to learn that lesson. I hope someday you'll give me a chance to prove I've changed. Love you, your daughter." I read that letter 3 times looking for signs of manipulation or false promises, but it felt genuine, raw, and honest in a way my daughter had never been before. I did not respond right away. I needed time to think and process my feelings. I needed to be sure that any decision I made came from wisdom, not from loneliness or guilt. 2 weeks later, I wrote her back. My letter was shorter, but equally honest. I told her I appreciated her apology and her willingness to look at herself critically. I told her I was proud that she was trying to become a better person. But I also told her that rebuilding our relationship would take time, that I needed to see consistent change, not just words, that I would not tolerate being treated badly ever again, that our relationship going forward would be between 2 adults with boundaries, not a mother who gave everything and a daughter who took everything. I suggested we start slowly, maybe coffee once a month, maybe phone calls every couple of weeks. Nothing rushed or forced, just small steps toward rebuilding trust. She responded immediately, agreeing to whatever timeline I needed. And so we began the slow process of healing. Our first coffee meeting was awkward and uncomfortable. We sat across from each other at a small cafe, both unsure what to say. But gradually we started talking. Really talking, not just surface-level conversations about weather and work. My daughter told me about her therapy sessions and what she was learning about herself. She admitted that watching her father cheat on me and then justify it had messed with her understanding of loyalty and commitment. She said she had been angry at me for years without even realizing it. Angry because I stayed kind and hopeful despite being hurt. Angry because my pain made her feel guilty. Angry because she did not know how to process all the complicated emotions of watching her parents' marriage fall apart. So she had taken that anger out on me because I was safe. I would not leave her or stop loving her no matter how badly she behaved. Hearing this was painful but also enlightening. I had not realized how much my own behavior had affected her, how my inability to set boundaries had actually harmed our relationship instead of protecting it. We both had work to do. Me on learning to set healthy boundaries and demand respect. Her on learning to treat people with kindness even when she was hurting. Our second meeting went a little better. She brought photos from her volunteer work and told me stories about the elderly people she'd been spending time with. One woman reminded her of me, she said. Strong and giving, but also lonely because her family did not appreciate her. My daughter said working with these seniors had opened her eyes to how she had treated me, how she had taken me for granted, exactly the way these people's families took them for granted. I could see genuine change in her, not just in her words, but in her actions and her energy. She was softer, somehow less defensive, more thoughtful. Over the following months, our meetings became more frequent. Coffee turned into lunches. Lunches turned into walks in the park. Walks turned into her visiting my little yellow house. She met my cat and laughed at his silly personality. She admired the paintings I had been working on. She helped me plant vegetables in the garden. Slowly, carefully, we built something new. Not the old mother-otter relationship where I gave everything and she took everything. Something more balanced and healthy. We both had bad days. Days when old patterns tried to resurface. Days when she said something thoughtless and I had to remind her that was not okay. Days when I wanted to fix her problems and had to stop myself. But we worked through those moments with honesty and respect. We talked about our feelings instead of burying them. We apologized when we messed up. We gave each other grace while also holding each other accountable. One afternoon, about 6 months after our reconciliation began, my daughter showed up at my house with tears in her eyes. I immediately worried that something terrible had happened. "What's wrong?" I asked, pulling her inside. She shook her head. "Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. I just needed to tell you something." We sat on the porch swing together. She took my hand and held it tightly. "I got a promotion at work," she said. "They made me a team leader." Smiled. "That's wonderful. Why are you crying?" "Because the first thing I wanted to do was call you and tell you. Not to brag or to ask for anything. Just to share my good news with my mom because I knew you would be proud of me." She wiped her tears away and I realized that's what I should have felt all along. You should have been the first person I wanted to share things with. The first person I turned to when things were good or bad. But I pushed you away and treated you like you didn't matter. I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry for all the time we lost. I hugged her tightly. We can't get that time back, but we have time now. That's what matters. She pulled back and looked at me. "Seriously, I need to know something. That night you sent the email firing me. Did you do it because you wanted to hurt me or because you wanted to help me?" I thought carefully before answering. Both, if I'm honest. Part of me wanted you to feel some of the pain you caused me. But a bigger part of me knew you needed to face consequences. You were becoming someone I didn't like, someone cruel and entitled. I couldn't watch that happen without doing something. "You could have just talked to me," she said quietly. "Would you have listened?" asked. She was quiet for a moment, then shook her head. "No, probably not. I would have made excuses and blamed everyone else. I needed to lose everything to finally see clearly." We sat in comfortable silence watching the sun set over my little garden. "I visited Dad last week," she said. "Eventually I told him what happened between us, how I threw you out, how you fired me, how we've been rebuilding our relationship. What did he say?" I asked, curious, despite myself. He said, "I got what I deserved, that you were always too soft on me, and he was glad you finally grew a spine." She laughed bitterly. Then he asked if I could loan him money because he and Jennifer are having financial problems. I was not surprised. My ex-husband had always been good at making himself the victim and asking others to solve his problems. I told him no. My daughter continued, "I said I barely have enough to support myself, and even if I did have extra money, I wouldn't give it to him after watching how he treated you and how he encouraged me to treat you." Pride swelled in my chest. How did he react? He got angry, called me selfish and ungrateful, said after everything he'd done for me, this was how I repaid him. She shook her head. It was like looking in a mirror and seeing who I used to be, making everything about me, playing the victim, refusing to take responsibility. "I don't want to be that person anymore, Mom." I squeezed her hand. "You're not that person anymore. You're becoming someone better, someone I'm proud to know." That conversation marked a turning point. My daughter started seeing her father more clearly. She realized that his relationship with his new wife was not as perfect as it appeared. She saw how he blamed others for his problems. She recognized the manipulation tactics he used. Most importantly, she understood that choosing him over me had not been about loyalty or love. It had been about convenience and selfishness. Over the next year, our relationship continued to grow stronger. My daughter introduced me to her boyfriend, a a kind young man who treated her with respect. She asked for my advice on career decisions. She invited me to her apartment for dinner. She remembered my birthday and sent thoughtful gifts. She called just to chat, not because she needed something. These small gestures meant everything to me. They showed me that the change was real and lasting. One evening, she asked if she could talk to me about something important. We were sitting in my living room drinking tea and watching the fire crackle in the fireplace. "I've been thinking a lot about forgiveness," she began, "about whether you've forgiven me for everything I did." I set down my teacup. "I have forgiven you, not all at once, but gradually. Every time you showed up and did the work to be better, forgiveness grew a little more. Forgiveness isn't a single moment. It's a process." She nodded slowly. "I'm still working on forgiving myself. Some days I think about that night I threw you out, and I feel so ashamed I can barely breathe. Shame can be useful if it teaches you to make different choices," I said gently. "But if you hold on to it too tightly, it becomes a cage. You've changed. You've grown. You've apologized and made amends. At some point, you have to forgive yourself, too." Tears rolled down her cheeks. How? How do I forgive myself for being so cruel to the person who loved me most? I moved closer and put my arm around her. "The same way I forgave you. One day at a time, one choice at a time. By being the person you wish you had been back then. By treating people with kindness. By showing up even when it's hard. That's how you earn your own forgiveness." We cried together that night, but they were healing tears, not painful ones, the kind that wash away old wounds and make room for new growth. As winter turned to spring, I decided to tell my daughter the full truth about the building she had worked in, about the house she had lived in, about all the properties and investments I had made during the divorce. We were having dinner at her apartment when I brought it up. "There's something I need to tell you," I began. "Something I've kept from you because the timing never felt right." She looked concerned. "What is it?" "Remember the house you were living in, the one you threw me out of?" She flinched at the memory but nodded. "I own that house," I said quietly. "I bought it for you as a graduation gift, but I never told you. I wanted you to feel independent and proud, so I arranged for you to rent it at an incredibly low price that you could afford. You thought you were making it on your own, but I was supporting you the whole time." Her face went pale. "What?" "But I thought you thought your father helped you get that house. He took credit for it because I let him. I didn't want to make things complicated. I just wanted you to be happy and secure." She put her head in her hands. "Oh my God. I threw you out of a house you owned, a house you bought for me. Yes, but you didn't know that. And in some ways, not knowing made the lesson more powerful. You learned what it feels like to lose something important through your own actions." I continued telling her about the investments, the building, the careful planning I had done to protect myself financially. She listened in shocked silence. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. "I don't know what to say. All this time, I thought you were the weak one, the one who got left with nothing after the divorce. But you were actually the strong one, the smart one, the one who planned ahead and protected herself. I had to become that person," I explained. "The old me would have given everything away and ended up with nothing, but I learned that taking care of yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary, especially when the people you love don't have your best interests at heart." She reached across the table and took my hand. "Thank you for telling me, and thank you for being strong enough to let me fail. I know that must have been so hard. It was the hardest thing I've ever done," I admitted. "Every instinct told me to rescue you, but I knew that rescuing you would only hurt you in the long run. You needed to stand on your own feet and figure out who you are without someone always catching you when you fall. I think I'm finally figuring it out." she said with a small smile. It only took losing everything and rebuilding from scratch. We laughed and it felt good. Real laughter between two people who had been through hell and somehow found their way back to each other. Time continued moving forward. My daughter got promoted again at work. She moved into a better apartment. She and her boyfriend got engaged. Through all of these milestones, I was there not as someone funding her life or fixing her problems, but as a supportive presence, someone she could count on for advice and encouragement. Our relationship was not perfect. We still had disagreements and hurt feelings sometimes, but we had learned how to work through those moments with honesty and respect. When she asked me to help plan her wedding, I said yes with one condition. I want to be involved because you value my opinion and enjoy my company. I told her not because you need my money or my connections. If this is about what I can provide rather than who I am to you, then I'd rather step back. She looked me straight in the eye. Mom, I want you there because you're my mother, because I love you, because I can't imagine getting married without you by my side. The rest doesn't matter. Those words meant more to me than any apology ever could. The wedding was beautiful and simple. My daughter wore a dress we picked out together. She walked down the aisle with tears in her eyes. When she reached the altar and turned to look at the guests, she caught my eye and mouthed, "I love you." During the reception, she gave a speech thanking everyone for coming. Then she did something unexpected. She asked me to stand up. "I need to say something to my mom," she announced to the room full of guests. A few years ago, I was not a good person. I was selfish and cruel, especially to my mother. I treated her like she was worthless. I threw her out of my house and told her I never liked her. I can barely believe I did those things when I look back on them now. The room was silent. People looked uncomfortable, unsure where this was going. My mom could have given up on me. She could have walked away and never spoken to me again. Instead, she loved me enough to let me face the consequences of my actions. She let me fail, she let me struggle. She let me learn who I really was when nobody was there to save me. My daughter's voice cracked with emotion, and through that struggle, I found myself. I became someone I'm actually proud of, someone who tries to be kind and thoughtful, someone who values the people in her life instead of using them. She walked over to where I was sitting and took my hands. Mom, you are the strongest, bravest, most incredible woman I know. Thank you for not giving up on me even when I deserved it. Thank you for teaching me that love sometimes means letting go. Thank you for showing me what real strength looks like. I love you so much. Everyone applauded as I stood and hugged her tightly. We both cried happy tears. Later that night, as the celebration wound down, I stood outside looking at the stars. My sister came and stood beside me. "You did good," she said simply. "With her, with yourself, with everything," I nodded, feeling a deep sense of peace. It was worth it. All the pain, all the hard decisions, all the sleepless nights. It was worth it to get to this moment. "Do you ever regret how things went down?" she asked. "Do you wish you'd handled it differently?" I thought about that question carefully. No, I think everything happened exactly how it needed to happen. If I had rescued her immediately, she would never have changed. If I had been softer or more forgiving too soon, she would never have learned the lesson. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is let them experience the natural consequences of their choices. My sister hugged me. "You're a better person than most people would be in your situation." "I'm not better," I corrected. "I'm just someone who finally learned to value herself as much as she valued everyone else." That's a lesson that came too late in life, but better late than never. As I drove home that night past sleeping houses and quiet streets, I thought about the journey I had been on. From the devastation of divorce to the heartbreak of being rejected by my daughter, to the difficult decision to let her fail to this moment of reconciliation and joy had not been easy. There had been many nights when I questioned my choices, many moments when I wondered if I was being too harsh or too unforgiving. But looking back, I knew I had made the right decisions. My daughter was thriving not because I had protected her from hardship, but because I had allowed her to face it. She was happy not because everything had been easy, but because she had earned her happiness through hard work and personal growth. And I was at peace, not because everything had worked out perfectly, but because I had finally learned to stand up for myself. The little yellow house welcomed me home with its warm lights and comfortable spaces. My cat greeted me at the door, purring loudly. I made a cup of tea and sat on the porch swing, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders against the cool night air. Life was good. Not perfect, but good. I had enough money to be comfortable. I had friends who cared about me. I had hobbies that brought me joy. I had a daughter who finally understood my value. Most importantly, I had myself. The version of me who had been lost for so many years, buried under expectations and sacrifice and the need to be everything to everyone. That version of me had finally emerged stronger and wiser and more complete. I thought about my ex-husband and his new wife. I heard through the grapevine that they were struggling financially and marital. Part of me felt satisfaction at that news, but a bigger part of me just felt indifferent. They were no longer my concern. Their happiness or unhappiness had no impact on my life. I had moved on completely. My phone buzzed with a text from my daughter, a photo of her and her new husband both smiling widely. The message said, "Thank you for everything, Mom. I love you." I smiled and sent a heart emoji in response. Then I set the phone aside and returned to enjoying the peaceful night. This was my life now, built on my own terms with my own strength according to my own values. Nobody could take it away from me because I had created it myself. The scars from the past were still there. They probably always would be, but they no longer define me. They were simply part of my story, evidence that I had survived difficult times and emerged stronger. As I sat there, I thought about other mothers and fathers who might be going through similar situations. People who loved their children unconditionally but received disrespect in return. People who sacrificed everything only to be taken for granted. People who were afraid to set boundaries because they feared losing their children completely. If I could talk to those people, I would tell them this: love does not mean accepting mistreatment. Love does not mean sacrificing your dignity. Love does not mean always being available no matter how badly you are treated. True love sometimes means stepping back. It means letting people face the consequences of their actions. It means valuing yourself enough to demand respect. It means having the courage to set boundaries even when it hurts. And most importantly, it means understanding that you cannot control how other people treat you. You can only control how you respond. You can choose to continue accepting disrespect, or you can choose to walk away until respect is offered. Chose to walk away, and in walking away, I saved both myself and my daughter. I saved myself from a life of being used and taken for granted. And I saved my daughter from becoming someone permanently entitled and cruel. The pain of that separation forced both of us to grow. Looking back now, years later, I can honestly say I would make the same choices again. Not because I wanted to hurt my daughter, but because I loved her enough to let her become who she needed to be. And I love myself enough to stop accepting treatment I did not deserve. The stars shone brightly above me. The night was peaceful and still inside my little yellow house. Everything was exactly as it should be. I had built this life from nothing, from heartbreak and rejection and loss. I had taken all that pain and transformed it into something beautiful and strong. My daughter had her own life now. Her own home, her own career, her own family starting. She no longer needed me to survive, but she wanted me in her life. And that made all the difference. We talked regularly now, real conversations about hopes and fears and dreams. She asked for my advice and actually listened. She remembered important dates. She showed up when she said she would. She had become reliable and thoughtful and kind. The woman I always knew she could be if she just had the chance to grow. Sometimes I still thought about that terrible night when she threw me out. The cold shock of rejection. The humiliation of being escorted out by security. The crushing realization that my own daughter did not value me. But those memories no longer brought only pain. They also brought gratitude. Gratitude for the wake-up call. Gratitude for the strength I found within myself. Gratitude for the opportunity to build something better. If that night had never happened, I might have spent the rest of my life accepting scraps of affection, settling for being tolerated, instead of valued, believing that was the best I deserved. Instead, I learned that I deserve so much more. And once I learned that lesson, everything changed. I finished my tea and stood up, stretching my tired muscles. It was time for bedtime to rest and recharge for whatever tomorrow would bring. As I walked inside and locked the door behind me, I felt completely safe. This was my sanctuary, my refuge, my home in every sense of the word. Nobody could throw me out of here. Nobody could make me feel unwelcome. This space was mine, bought with my own money, filled with my own belongings, reflecting my own taste. I climbed into bed, and my cat immediately curled up beside me. I stroked his soft fur and thought about how much my life had changed. From married woman to divorced, from mother living to serve to woman living for herself. From victim to survivor, from broken to whole. The journey had been long and painful, but every step had been necessary. Every tear had served a purpose. Every moment of doubt had taught me something important. And now, here I was, happy. Peaceful, complete. Not because someone else loved me or validated me or needed me, but because I had learned to love, validate, and care for myself. That was the real lesson, the one that took me decades to learn. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot give to others what you do not have yourself. You cannot teach people to value you if you do not value yourself first. My daughter understood that now too. She had learned it the hard way through loss and struggle and pain, but she had learned it, and that made all the difference. As sleep finally came, my last thought was one of deep gratitude. Not for the easy times or the happy moments, but for the hard times that forced me to become stronger. For the painful moments that taught me my worth. For the struggles that showed me what I was capable of surviving. Life had knocked me down repeatedly. My husband's betrayal, my daughter's rejection, the loss of everything familiar. But I had gotten back up every single time, not quickly, not gracefully, but determinately. And in getting back up, I had discovered something powerful. I was stronger than I ever knew, more capable than I had imagined, more deserving than I had believed. Those discoveries were worth every moment of pain. Morning came softly with sunlight filtering through my bedroom curtains. I woke feeling rested and peaceful. My cat stretched lazily beside me, yawning widely. It was a Saturday. No obligations, no schedule, just a day to spend however I wanted. I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table looking out at the garden. The vegetables I had planted were growing well. The flowers were blooming beautifully. Everything I had nurtured was thriving. That felt like a metaphor for my life. The things I tended with care and attention grew strong. The things I neglected withered. For too many years, I had neglected myself while nurturing everyone else. Now I was finally finding balance. My phone rang. It was my daughter. "Good morning, Mom. I hope I didn't wake you." "No, I've been up for a while. How are you?" "Good." Really good. I was calling to see if you wanted to come over for brunch tomorrow. Nothing fancy, just eggs and toast and conversation. Smiled. That sounds perfect. What time? How about 10 Sundras? I'll be there. After we hung up, I sat with that warm feeling you get when someone thinks of you and reaches out simply because they want your company. Not because they need something, not out of obligation, just because. That was the relationship I had always wanted with my daughter. And now, finally, we had it. The rest of the day passed peacefully. I worked in the garden pulling weeds and watering plants. I read a book on the porch. I called my sister and caught up on family news. I cooked myself a nice dinner and ate it slowly, savoring each bite. These simple pleasures meant everything to me now. They were evidence that I had built a life worth living, a life that belonged entirely to me. Nobody could take it away or diminish it. It existed independent of anyone else's approval or participation. Sunday morning arrived bright and clear. I dressed carefully, choosing an outfit that made me feel comfortable and confident. I picked up fresh flowers from the market to bring to my daughter's apartment. When I arrived, she greeted me with a warm hug. Her husband welcomed me kindly. Their home smelled like coffee and cinnamon rolls. We sat around their small dining table and talked about everything and nothing: work challenges, future plans, funny stories, random observations. It was easy and comfortable, the kind of conversation that flows naturally between people who genuinely enjoy each other's company. At one point, my daughter reached over and squeezed my hand. "I'm really glad you're here, Mom." "Me too, sweetheart, me too." After brunch, we walked to a nearby park. The weather was perfect. Warm sunshine, gentle breeze, blue sky dotted with white clouds. We found a bench overlooking a pond where ducks paddled lazily. "Can I ask you something?" my daughter said after we'd been sitting quietly for a while. "Of course." "Do you think you'll ever get married again, or date, or give someone else a chance?" I considered the question carefully. Maybe someday if I meet someone who adds to my life instead of taking from it. Someone who respects my boundaries and values my independence. But I'm not looking actively. I'm happy as I am. "You deserve someone wonderful," she said firmly. "Someone who sees how amazing you are and treats you accordingly." Her words touched me deeply. This was the daughter I had always hoped she would become. Someone who thought about others, who wanted good things for the people she loved, who understood that everyone deserved respect and kindness. "Thank you, sweetie. That means a lot coming from you." We sat together watching the ducks and feeling the sun on our faces. This moment was perfect in its simplicity. No drama, no crisis, no problems to solve, just two people who loved each other enjoying a beautiful day. As I drove home later that afternoon, I reflected on how far we had both come from that terrible night of rejection to this peaceful day of connection. The journey between those 2 points had been long and difficult, but we had made it together, yet separate, connected, yet independent, loving each other while also loving ourselves. That was the key to healthy relationships: maintaining your own identity while sharing your life with others, never losing yourself in the process of loving someone else. My ex-husband had never understood that he wanted me to revolve around him completely, to have no needs or desires of my own, to exist only to serve his wants. My daughter had inherited that mindset for a while, but she had learned better. She had learned that real love celebrates independence, not dependence. The years continued to pass in a gentle rhythm. Seasons changed. Holidays came and went. My daughter and her husband bought a house. They had a baby, my first grandchild. I was there for the birth, holding my daughter's hand as she brought new life into the world. Looking at my granddaughter's tiny, perfect face, I felt overwhelmed with emotion. This beautiful child represented hope and new beginnings, a chance to do things better, to create healthier patterns. My daughter was determined to be a good mother, Not perfect, but present, not overbearing, but loving. She had learned from both my mistakes and her own. She knew the importance of boundaries and respect. When my granddaughter was a few months old, my daughter asked if we could talk seriously. We sat in her living room while the baby slept peacefully in her crib. "I've been thinking a lot about motherhood," she began, "about what kind of mother I want to be, what kind of example I want to set." "You're doing wonderfully," I assured her. "No, let me finish. I want to make sure my daughter never treats me the way I treated you, but I also don't want to parent from fear. I want to parent from love and wisdom." She took a deep breath. "So I need to ask, what would you do differently if you could go back? What should I know so I don't repeat your mistakes?" It was a difficult question, one that required complete honesty. "I would set boundaries earlier," I said slowly. "I would make it clear that love does not mean accepting disrespect. I would teach you that actions have consequences even when you're my child. I would value my own needs as much as yours instead of always putting you first." "But you were such a good mom," she protested. "You did everything for me. That was the problem. I did too much. I shielded you from natural consequences. I made your life too easy. I let you believe you were the center of the universe." Paused, choosing my words carefully. Being a good parent doesn't mean protecting your child from every difficulty. It means teaching them how to handle difficulty, giving them tools and skills, letting them fail safely so they learn resilience. My daughter nodded thoughtfully. "So I should let her struggle sometimes. Let her experience age-appropriate struggles. Yes, if she makes a mess, have her help clean it up. If she breaks a toy through carelessness, don't immediately replace it. If she hurts someone's feelings, make sure she apologizes sincerely. Teach her that her actions affect others, and she's responsible for making things right." That makes sense. "What else? Teach her to respect all people regardless of their position or status. Don't let her speak rudely to servers or store clerks or anyone else. Don't tolerate her being mean to other children. Make it clear that kindness is non-negotiable. Thought for a moment and make sure she sees you taking care of yourself. Show her that mothers are people too, that we have needs and interests beyond our children. Model healthy boundaries so she learns them naturally." My daughter was quiet, absorbing everything. "I don't want to make the mistakes I made," she finally said. "I don't want to hurt her the way I hurt you." "You won't," I said with confidence, "because you're aware you're thinking about these things intentionally. That awareness will guide you to make better choices." She hugged me tightly. "Thank you for being honest, and thank you for loving me enough to let me learn hard lessons always." I replied, "That's what real love looks like." Watching my daughter parent her own child was fascinating. She was firm when needed, but also warm and affectionate. She set clear rules and enforced them consistently. She apologized when she made mistakes. She was raising her daughter to be kind, respectful, and responsible, and she was doing it while maintaining her own identity. She continued working part-time. She made time for her marriage. She pursued her hobbies. She was showing her daughter that mothers are whole people, not just caretakers. This made me deeply proud. The cycle was breaking. The patterns were changing. My granddaughter would grow up with a healthier model of love and relationships. Time moved forward in its inevitable way. My granddaughter grew from baby to toddler to preschooler. She was bright and curious and full of personality, and she adored her grandmother. We had a special relationship, just the two of us. I took her to the park and the library. I taught her to bake cookies and plant flowers. I read her stories and answered her endless questions about how things worked. But I was careful never to undermine her mother. If my daughter set a rule, I enforced it. If she said no candy before dinner, I respected that. I was there to support her parenting, not compete with it. One day, when my granddaughter was about 4 years old, she asked me a question that caught me off guard. "Grandma, were you always happy?" I smiled at her innocence. "No, sweetie, I wasn't always happy. Sometimes I was very sad." "Why were you sad?" she asked with the directness of young children. "Because some people I loved treated me unkindly, and it took me a long time to learn that I deserved better." She thought about this seriously. "Did they say sorry eventually?" "Yes, after they learned important lessons." "That's good. You should always say sorry when you hurt someone. Mommy taught me that." "Your mommy is very wise." I agreed. This simple conversation reminded me how far we had all come. My granddaughter was learning lessons at age for that had taken me 50 years to understand. She was learning that everyone deserves respect, that sorry matters, that treating people kindly is important. These were the gifts my daughter was giving her child, the gifts I wished I had given my daughter more consistently, but I could not change the past. I could only appreciate the present and support the future. As my granddaughter grew older, she became curious about family history. She asked questions about my life, where I grew up, what I did for work, who my parents were. I answered honestly, but age appropriately. I told her about challenges I had faced and how I overcame them. I told her about mistakes I made and what I learned. One evening, when she was about 7, she asked about my divorce. Mommy said, "You and Grandpa used to be married, but not anymore. What happened?" I looked at my daughter, who nodded permission for me to answer. "Grandpa and I wanted different things from life," I explained carefully. "Sometimes people who love each other realize they can't be happy together anymore, so they decide to live separately." "Were you sad?" my granddaughter asked with concern. "Very sad. Divorce is always sad, even when it's the right choice." "Did Mommy help you feel better?" Smiled. "Not at first, but eventually, yes. We had to work through some difficult times together, but we made it, and now we're very close." My granddaughter seemed satisfied with this answer. She gave me a big hug and went back to playing with her toys. After she left the room, my daughter and I sat together quietly. "Thank you for handling that well." She said she deserves honest answers. Not all the details, but the truth. I agree. Kids are smarter than we give them credit for. They can handle reality if we present it appropriately. My daughter sighed. "I worry sometimes that my childhood will affect how she sees relationships, that she'll be scared of marriage or commitment because of what happened with you and Dad." "She won't," I assured her, "because you and your husband are showing her what a healthy marriage looks like. You communicate. You work through problems together. You treat each other with respect. That's what she'll learn from." "I hope you're right." "I am. She's going to be fine. More than fine. She's going to be amazing." And she was. My granddaughter grew into a thoughtful, compassionate young person. She did well in school. She had good friends. She stood up for kids who were being bullied. She volunteered at animal shelters. She was everything I had hoped my own daughter would be. And she was that way, because my daughter had learned and grown and become a better parent than I had been. This gave me more satisfaction than anything else in my life. Knowing that my pain and mistakes had ultimately led to something good, that the hard lessons had been passed down in healthier forms, that the cycle had been broken. As I grew older, my daughter became more protective of me. She called regularly to check on me. She invited me to family dinners. She made sure I wasn't lonely or isolated. The roles had reversed in some ways. Now she was taking care of me the way I had once taken care of her, but it was different from before. This care came from genuine love and concern, not obligation. She wanted to spend time with me because she valued my company, not because she felt guilty. On my 70th birthday, my daughter threw a surprise party for me. All my friends were there. My sister, my granddaughter, even some colleagues from my working days. My daughter gave a speech that made everyone cry. My mom taught me the most important lesson anyone can learn, she said. She taught me that love without boundaries isn't really love at all. Real love requires mutual respect. Real love means holding people accountable. Real love sometimes means stepping back and letting people face consequences. She looked directly at me. Mom, you could have given up on me when I was at my worst. When I treated you unforgivably, when I threw you out and chose other people over you, but you didn't give up. You just changed the terms of our relationship. You demanded respect. And in doing that, you saved me from becoming someone terrible. I'm the person I am today because you loved me enough to let me fail, because you valued yourself enough to walk away, because you showed me that actions have consequences, and people don't have to accept mistreatment just because you're family. She wiped tears from her eyes. Thank you for being strong when I was weak. Thank you for setting boundaries when I had none. Thank you for teaching me the difference between love and enabling. Thank you for being the most incredible mother anyone could ask for. Everyone applauded. I stood and hugged my daughter tightly. I love you, I whispered. I love you too, Mom, more than you'll ever know. That night, driving home from the party, I felt a profound sense of completion. My life had not been easy. I had faced betrayal, rejection, and heartbreak. But I had survived all of it more than survived. I had thrived. I had rebuilt myself from nothing. I had created a life I loved. I had repaired a broken relationship. I had learned to value myself. These were accomplishments worth celebrating. As I pulled into my driveway, I looked at my little yellow house with deep affection. This house had been my refuge during the darkest times. The place where I learned who I was apart from being someone's wife or mother. Now it was simply home, comfortable, familiar, and entirely mine. I went inside and prepared for bed, following my nightly routine. As I climbed under the covers, my cat curled up beside me, purring contentedly. I thought about how different my life was now compared to that terrible night years ago. The night I was thrown out and rejected. The night that broke me, but also freed me. If someone had told me then that everything would work out, I wouldn't have believed them. The pain was too fresh, the hurt too deep. But time had proven that healing was possible, that relationships could be repaired, that people could change. My daughter had changed. We had both become better versions of ourselves through struggle and determination. The journey had been worth it. Every painful step had led somewhere meaningful. As sleep came, my final thought was simple, but profound. I had spent so many years seeking validation from others, trying to earn love through service and sacrifice, believing my worth came from how much I gave. Now I understood the truth. My worth had always been inherent. It didn't need to be earned or proven, simply was. And once I understood that everything else fell into place, people who truly loved me showed respect. Those who didn't were removed from my life. Boundaries were maintained. Self-care became non-negotiable. This was the lesson I would leave behind, not just to my daughter and granddaughter, but to anyone who might hear my story. Value yourself. Set boundaries. Don't accept mistreatment in the name of love. Walk away when necessary. Let people face consequences. Real love doesn't require you to diminish yourself. Real love celebrates your strength and respects your dignity. These truths had saved me. And now as I drifted off to sleep in my peaceful home, I knew I was exactly where I needed to be. Not because someone else had made room for me, but because I had made room for myself. And that made all the difference. The end of my story is really the beginning of a new chapter. One where I live on my own terms, loved by people who truly value me, at peace with the past and hopeful about the future. If you've ever felt taken for granted or disrespected by people you love, remember this: you deserve better. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away, until others learn to value what they've lost. It's never too late to choose yourself, to set boundaries, to demand respect, to build a life that brings you joy rather than pain. I did it in my 60s after decades of putting everyone else first. But it's possible at any age, in any circumstance. The first step is always the hardest, deciding that you matter, that your feelings are valid, that your needs are important. Once you take that step, everything else follows, not easily, not quickly, but inevitably. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of your own struggles, share your experience in the comments below. Sometimes knowing we're not alone makes all the difference. Your story matters. Your pain is valid. Your journey towards self-respect and dignity is worth every difficult step. Subscribe to Granny's Voice for more stories about resilience healing and finding strength when life knocks you down. We're here to remind you that it's never too late to choose yourself and demand the respect you deserve. Remember, loving yourself isn't selfish. Setting boundaries isn't cruel. Walking away isn't giving up. Sometimes these actions are the most loving things you can do for yourself and the people who need to learn how to treat you properly. Thank you for listening to my story. May you find the courage to write your own ending, one where you are valued, respected, and loved the way you deserve. See you in the next story.